Hello everyone, and welcome to the Velvet Room. Today, I'm going to be doing something a little bit different. I wanted to speak about One Piece today. Particularly, I want to say around the last 10 to 15 chapters. That's chapters 1034 to 1049, I believe. And, of course, if you're not caught up with the manga at this point, for One Piece, which the most recent chapter was chapter 1049, I don't recommend that you watch any further because I will be saying some things that are going to be spoilery, and I don't want to spoil you on One Piece if you haven't experienced the story up until this point. I assure you it's a very good manga. It is long, but I mean, I think it's worth the journey. I wanted to kind of do something different today, so I didn't really want to, say for instance, script out something as I typically would. I wanted this to be more of a discussion video, so if I start to do what I just did and kind of lose train of thought, or maybe just trying to piece together a thought between another thought and put a few ahs in between there, bear with me. It is my first time trying this, but I do really like this story. It's one of my favorite stories that I've ever read, fiction-wise, and probably one of my favorite stories I've ever read, you know, besides like a couple that I've read before. And I really want to share the joy of how much I love this manga and just want to support it in, you know, any positive way that I can, especially for the author and his crew, Echiro Oda, for all of the hard work that they do in making this such an amazing story. So today I kind of wanted to just basically do an overview of what I feel about the Wano Country arc, or Wano Kuni Arc, at this point in time, with this very pivotal moment that we've reached in chapter 1049. I want to take this opportunity to give a shout out to one of my favorite One Piece theorists, Joy Boy Theories. I'll have his link in the description in case you already don't know about him. He makes really good One Piece theories. I've been watching him for a couple of years now. It's been a big inspiration to me and part of the main reason that I'm doing this to begin with. I watched his last two videos concerning chapters 1048 and 1049, and that's kind of what inspired me to make this Wano Kuni tribute, or, you know, my personal, you know, impact from reading the Wano Kuni arc, being a One Piece fan at this point. So I first want to start out by really praising the author Echiro Oda for everything that he has done in the Wano Kuni arc. Now, in an imperfect world, there's no such thing as a perfect author, but there are authors in this world that I feel like create stories that are very impactful to the point to where they become legendary, and I think One Piece has definitely taken its stance in being one of the more legendary stories of the world. I say that not in a light sense. Like, to me, it's a very impactful story, you know, even on a world, you know, global scale. I really want to praise him for all of the work that he's done, because I have to say, reading through the Wano Kuni arc has been some of the most awe-inspiring times I can praise this arc for eternity. It's such a good arc. I feel like he wrote so many things so poetically and beautifully in this arc, even though those words kind of mean the same thing, but I just can't praise him enough for how well this arc and the characters and the world building and the villains and all of this strife and conflict reaching this climactic pivotal point in the manga, all being tied together by this one author and his crew. And I feel like it's incredible what they've been able to produce with this arc. So to begin, I really like to after that praising I did, kind of highlight some of the moments in this chapter, or in these last 15 chapters, that kind of stuck out to me and impacted me personally, like, that I found very interesting. And I'll do a little bit of theorizing. I'm not very good at theorizing. That's why I watch, Joy Boy Theories and other theorists, because I'm not so good at theorizing when it comes to, like, what could happen. To me, there's just so many possibilities. Like, there's ways to make logical deductions about what could potentially happen, but I would say I'm not the best suited for that. I'm more suited for, at times I can be for certain things, but I'll do a little bit of it. I'm not going to be doing much of it, and if I ramble, I apologize. I do say this again, this is my first time really doing this style and format, so I kind of want to see how it goes. I want to talk about one of the things that really caught my eye when it came to some of the chapters in the part where Sanji and Queen were fighting, and also Zoro and King. So I really find Sanji and Queen's fight very interesting, mostly concerning Sanji. So I could see Queen's whole entire villainy, like, mindset, that he's so vengeful against Sanji's father, Vinsmoke Judge, much in the way that Caesar Clown is with Vegapunk, to the point to where he's driven himself to basically madness trying to prove that he's the better scientist. And I can see why he pushed his body to become this mechanical dinosaur machine, and why he's so, bent on trying to, take out Sanji and copy the technology that they had and everything to try to prove that he's the better scientist. Then his, I assume at some point they were colleagues working on maybe a research project together or something that the world government had them working on. I have no idea how the science research world is in One Piece when it comes to that, because we've gotten very little of Vegapunk and how powerful and impactful the technological world or aspect of the One Piece world really is, beyond, the pacifistas, and knowing a couple of things concerning they have weaponry to counter, ancient weapons and stuff like that. So what I really found most interesting, not so much Queen, but Sanji. Sanji, to me, the fact that he activated his Vinsmoke, superhuman capabilities was just really intriguing to me. It makes me wonder if, when he was going through all of that training with Vinsmoke Judge, was he really, like, defective, or was it just some type of, developmental growth? Maybe it was emotional, I'm not sure, or maybe it was physical damage, I'm not sure. Sanji's been damaged physically plenty of times in the manga, so I don't see how Queen necessarily damaging him, like, to the point to where his bones were broken, was the trigger for it. And to some extent, I think it may be due to maybe when he fused with his raid suit, maybe that awakened something in him that started to take effect from that point, but I'm not sure. But one thing I will say is that it's really cool. Like, I love Sanji's new abilities, the fact that he's actually not a dud like, his father thought he was. He's actually a superhuman, and on top of that, he's probably one of the best ones that Vinsmoke created. He has been infused with Lunarian blood, or at least not blood, but Lunarian DNA, to the point to where we now understand why he's able to ignite his leg and not have his body, be on fire and physically harm himself. He has Lunarian DNA in him, which, from what we know, King is the only surviving member of that race. So he is, like, one of the rarest, he has one of the rarest types of DNA imbued in him, with one of their most unique physical capabilities, being that the ability to generate fire from their bodies. So in regards to Sanji and Queen, I think that's what really was fascinating to me, was that he actually is superhuman. This whole time he has been what Judge thought he wasn't. He was just a late bloomer, in my opinion. So that was really cool. Now, concerning King and Zoro's fight, there's a lot of things to talk about in this field. I feel like one of the biggest things was, I think I understand why King sided with Kaido, especially with the recent flashback from Kaido in chapter 1049. I really feel like King probably related to Kaido a lot on a empathetic level, because they seem to have both been government experiment lab rats that they were both experimented on to find out why, you know, genetically they were able to be these superhuman, you know, beings that they were. For Kaido, I'm not so sure if he's like half Oni, or, you know, like Orange Jr. race, and mixed with maybe giant blood. Like, we know that Big Mom potentially, you know, might be mixed with giant blood, or I'm not sure if she was just, you know, a large child, but I've always thought that maybe she had giant blood in her, and maybe that's why she felt such a kinship with them. But for Kaido, we definitely know from his horns that he probably has some Oni in him. So King being, you know, the last surviving member of the Lunarian race, which we still don't know why the world government chose King to be the last one to survive out of his race. Could be said that, you know, he was just the last one that didn't get slaughtered, or maybe he was hidden and, you know, they found him when everybody else was slaughtered, and they were like, oh, this is a prime opportunity to do what celestial dragons do and just be corrupted, you know, horrible people, and experiment on him. So I'm not sure, but his entire character really intrigues me, because I feel like in some regards to Kaido, he's kind of, his mentality and his mannerisms are more of a product of what he was subjected to. Not so much he would have become that way had he just been able to live his normal life, kind of by seeing the brutality and how, you know, heinous these people were in experimenting on him for, you know, scientific gain to make weapons, I assume. He didn't see like any reason to have, you know, trust for humans, I guess, or because, you know, apparently these people came from the moon, so, you know, how'd they get up there to, in the first place, to slaughter all of them? You know, that's still left to be said. But I really like Zoro's ability to gauge that, you know, King was not the type of opponent that he would be able to easily beat, which Zoro usually, you know, has his head pretty cool when it comes to that. And he really had to figure out quickly how to defeat him, otherwise he knew for sure King was going to get the best of him. It's one of the things I love about Zoro the most. He's not just a cool, you know, tri-wielding swordsman, he's also really level-headed. He's very logical, and, you know, he thinks before he acts in a lot of ways, unlike Luffy. So I like the idea of Zoro's sword awakening from the incitement of Hiyori's strumming. It really does drive home the ideology that the samurai sword carries the spirit of the samurai within it, and Zoro doesn't have as much control over that sword, I feel like, because Odin's spirit is still, you know, strong in that sword. It still feels like it has a purpose to fulfill. And it's not to say that Enma in itself doesn't have some type of will of its own. You know, that's something that I know Joy Boy Theories discussed multiple times, that maybe swords have, you know, cursed swords have wills of their own that are not easily imposed over by new wielders. So that was cool. On top of, you know, the attack that he did to finish King. That was cool. Thought it was really cool that it was symbolic that his wing being cut was kind of him symbolizing that, you know, he was, you know, a fallen angel from, you know, the celestial plane that he roamed upon on the moon with his people. You know, he's been thrown down from that position and disgraced in a way. So, and he'll probably never be able to fly again. I'm not sure if I'm pretty sure, you know, when he turns into his pterodon form, that's also going to affect the wing on his pterodon, so he probably is not going to be able to fly anymore. Regarding later on, when we get to the point where, you know, we start to get to the roof piece part, where, you know, all of these worst generation people like Kid, Law, Killer, Zoro, Luffy are up there facing these two formidable Yonko. And I know this part just got animated in the anime, and I believe episode 1017, I want to say. But it was just really cool to finally see, you know, our heroes arriving at their battle. You know, that was one moment that I really felt like was really cool to watch and witness. You know, our heroes are facing, you know, Luffy and his crew, Law, all of these things that we've done since Doflamingo, and sabotaging the Smile Fruits, and, you know, overthrowing Dressrosa, and finally getting here to Wano after going through Zou and Whole Cake Island. We're finally here facing two of the most formidable forces on the seas that we have to overcome if we're going to have a hope to make it to Raftel. It's just really impactful that we made it to that moment, and we had that really cool scene where they were lined up against them and their spirits were clashing with theirs to be on top. You know, who's going to overtake who. One thing I do have to say for sure regarding that is that I really like how Eustace Kid and Killer were depicted in Wano. I will honestly say I didn't really think much of Kid, and I like Killer because when he was first revealed, I just liked his design. I thought he looked really cool, and I still think he looks cool. But Kid was never somebody that really stuck out to me as like significant. I felt like he was going to be one of those worst generation guys, kind of like what Apu turned out to be. Like he just kind of got in the way and all of this. But the moment I found out that Kid was one of the only of the people that Kaido took in, from Basil Hawkins and Apu and Yurogi and, you know, Kid himself and Killer and their crews, that resisted Kaido even when, you know, Kaido had beat him within an inch of his life, I just had so much more respect for him. It's kind of like how Oda changed my opinion about Gang Bajie in Whole Cake Island. Like, I had so much more respect for him as a pirate, as a person in the One Piece world, because of how he was depicted in Whole Cake Island. And I can say so much so the same for Kid. Like, I am a big Kid fan now. I think he is full of guts, and he really has a strong sense of loyalty to his crew and fulfilling his dream. He's not a pushover like Apu or Basil Hawkins. He didn't fold underneath the pressure of being threatened by a Yonko. He kept his bravado that he was going to overtake Kaido and, you know, solidify his position as the Pirate King. And I have to say that's really honorable to see in Kid, and it's one of the reasons why I'll always, like, forever like him now, unless he does anything crazy. But I don't think he will. He still seems like he has good intentions in him. He doesn't seem like a bad person. He just, you know, of course, is rivaling with his rivals, Luffy and Law. When they were up on the roof and they were actually starting to fight with Big Mom and Kaido, a couple of interesting things that I took apart was Zoro's dragon blazing or dragon rising. I forget the name of the attack, but it's the one that he charged Enma with, and he was about to cut Kaido before Big Mom warned Kaido about the danger of like taking that attack head on. I find this really interesting because throughout most of the fight, we never see Big Mom, while she's up there with Kaido, warn him about any other attack. But this specific one, from all the other ones, you know, that they attacked, you know, Law attacked him, Luffy attacked him, you know, Kid attacked him, Law even hit him with the Gamma Knife, and that's like an attack that destroys you, you know, with, I imagine, radioactive plasma from the inside out. So that would, I feel like, would be warranted to be asked to dodge, you know, or warn your friend to dodge, or your alliance member. But she didn't warn him about any of those. She warned him about Zoro's Enma bladed attack, his single sword attack that cut the horn off of Onigashima. So I really feel like that attack in itself was really something like more than what we were given. I feel like there is something really powerful about that Enma sword that we still don't fully understand when it comes to how the cursed swords work and how their power is really drawn out. It could be, I guess, argued that the fact that Zoro was able to, the fact that Zoro was aiming to kill Kaido, you know, to take his head in that attack, that maybe incited Enma to let out even more of its ferocity, because that's what Oden let out Enma's ferocity for before he died, when he wielded Enma to take out Kaido. So maybe the sword knew that he was aiming for the man that, you know, killed his previous, you know, wielder, and drew out more of its own, you know, innate power to really try to take him out. So that's just something that I thought about when I noticed Zoro's attack on the sword. Another thing, I gotta say, Big Mom's power is cool, because being able to imbue her soul into inanimate things is really cool. She literally brought the lightning to life and commanded it to strike like everybody on the field, and I think that is like really cool. I just thought seeing it in the anime in the last like anime episode 1017 was really just a joy for me. Like, I was just ecstatic watching that, because I thought it was so well animated, and it was very like just cool to see, you know, Big Mom doing cool things with her powers, because I've always liked like her power. I think her power is really cool. Another thing that caught my eye was the fact that Cypher Pole Zero, obviously being in the midst of the war, you know, trying to do their little, push their little agenda, still have their eyes out for Nico Robin. So this goes back to, all the way back to what Aokiji said when Luffy first met Aokiji and lost to him when he got frozen by him. He was like, as long as this woman follows you around, you know, you're never gonna have really any rest from people trying to take her away from you, because of how significant she is. I kind of think about it in the same way that Big Mom treats King and Pudding. Like, apparently they're a part of a very rare race of people, and she desires to have, you know, all of the races of the world in her Toto land. So she sees them as like these entities of, you know, trophies almost, to like get them. But there's something that she wants, because like, you can't get another King because there is no other Lunarian. You can't get another Pudding because apparently there's not many three-eyed people still left. So it's just something to think about. You know, these people are still after Nico Robin, and they're still making an effort to get her. And even on top of that, Kaido and Big Mom said themselves that they were planning on using Nico Robin to try to take her, you know, ability to read poneglyphs, because that's something that only the Oharans innately have in them to be able to do. So just to have it re-established in the story that, you know, yeah, Nico Robin is still pursued was just really intriguing to me. Luffy losing the first time, not the first time when he got Thunderbogwood by, one-shotted Thunderbogwood by Kaido, up on the roof piece part of the fight, when he got knocked out and was thrown into the sea. I really feel like this was one of those moments where it reminded me a lot of when Luffy fought Katakuri, and he just couldn't seem to make any leeway against him before he started having the ability to use his innate or future sight observation haki. He was really struggling against Kaido. Kaido was clearly showing that in a battle of, you know, stamina, I am superior, you know. In a battle of duration, you know, I am superior. He's a dragon. So, like, and on top of that, he's a zone. I mean, it makes sense that he has this ability to do this, and not only that, he has a hybrid form, which is probably one of the most strongest forms for most zones. I felt like it was really significant because it was kind of, at the time that it happened, it really pushed us to question, you know, can Luffy really overcome, you know, 2 Yonkos at one time? Not only that, Kaido is, like Zoro said, he's a huge threat by himself. Like, dealing with both of them together was almost suicide. But Luffy losing instilled in us a sense of doubt in some cases. You know, I know for me it did. Like, wow, like, can he actually beat this guy? Like, he's so strong, like, he's so indestructible. I don't know if he has, you know, something that he can do to, like, overcome him. Because it wasn't like, you know, he was gonna pull a Katakuri and, you know, injure himself or, you know, handicap himself for the sake of an honorable fight. I think it was proven in the fight between Kaido and Oden that even if Kaido wins, maybe not in the way that he desires to, but just wins, you know, because somebody's attention was diverted or whatever it might be, like it was with Oden's case, he will still claim victory if it is obtainable. Because, you know, in his eyes, in a pirate's fight, as Luffy says, there's no rules. So, you know, you look the other way, you lose your attention span for a little bit from the fight, you know, I get a free hit, and that may be the hit that finishes you, but you lost. So I'm not going to give you like a second chance or wait for you to heal up and fight you at your full potential to, you know, justify beating you at your best. So I felt like, I know for me for sure, I was kind of in doubt that maybe Luffy could take this like entity out because of how strong and foreboding he was, and how easily he was able to, you know, take what Luffy was dealing out and deal back 10 times more than what he was, you know, dishing out on Kaido. One thing that really caught my eye about the fight with Kid Law and Big Mom was that, you know, it took the both of them to take Big Mom out. So I want to give Big Mom her credit where she's due. I know that she's not always seen as, you know, the strongest, or she may be seen as the joke Yonko sometimes because of how, you know, jokingly she gets pushed aside sometimes. But I really feel like Big Mom is really just as foreboding as Kaido. Maybe if you've watched, there's another YouTuber that does One Piece reviews, and for a while did blind reviews as she read through it. Her name is Merphy Napier. I remember her saying and watching one of her videos, because I'm a fan, I'll put her link in the description as well, that she felt that Big Mom was losing a lot of her bravado that she was originally set up to have. This very foreboding, you know, entity, very much like how when Kaido was revealed, that she started to deteriorate off of her when we really got to meet her and have interactions with her. But I want to remind that, you know, that is true, that she has been, you know, in situations that may have eroded some of her bravado or her forebodingness, but she is still extremely powerful. I mean, she clashed with Kaido. From what I saw in the chapter and the anime, they were depicted as equals, Kaido and Big Mom, as in they were both equally as strong. And I believe that Big Mom has, you know, with her power alone, has the ability to really, you know, be that foreboding entity. And I think she really was depicted that way at her best when she fought Kid and Law. Being able to take a part of her lifespan and burn her lifespan to become the strong entity with her soul blazing out of her, I felt like was like rekindled that forebodingness that she originally had, that like, this is a powerful Yonko that we're standing for. This is not a joke of a, you know, Yonko or something. You know, Kid and Law still stood up to her, but I think she really did a really good, it was really well written that she was able to retake that stance, taking on two of one of the stronger parts of the worst generation, Law and Kid. Now, I will say that throughout the fight, she did many things that I feel like were very, you know, significant as far as like showing her strength as a Yonko. Like, she's taking on Kid and Law, and unlike Kaido, she doesn't have a beast body to like give her, you know, this beast-like durability. She does have, you know, beast-like armament haki or natural armament haki to make her skin very, you know, almost impenetrable, but she's still human. Big Mom is still human, and she's taking gamma knives and, you know, Law's anesthesia attacks and Kid's, you know, bull, mechanical bull that he made out of scrap metal, and ripped the wall off of one of Onagashima's doors just to turn around and, you know, have the bull slam into the wall instead of her. Like, having scaffold thrown on top of her and just getting up like it was nothing. I mean, this is the same woman that took an entire Bronchiosaurus, you know, at least, I know, a good 5 stories in the air, like diving on her head, and just did not straight up die. She just went unconscious for a little bit. Like, Big Mom is a big threat, and I really like that Oda wrote her or drew her in this fight to be that powerful entity that she is. Because I love Big Mom and Kaido, and I like when they both show that they are Yonko and that they are capable of, you know, rivaling and holding their positions as Yonko. One thing that I will praise Big Mom and Kaido both on in Oda's writing of these villains is they do not fall into that trope of underestimating who they're fighting. They take seriously who they're fighting, and they realize that they don't need to hold back to fight against them. They fight them with their full strength. You know, they didn't hold back or, you know, necessarily try to act like they were stronger by suppressing their power to just prove that they could, you know, take them out without using their full power. They acknowledged their opponents, and they were willing to go all out themselves with these people because they knew that they were serious about trying to take their positions. So they rivaled that with, you know, serious defense of their positions. And I really like that they were depicted as that, as a rival, or as villains and entities that we're fighting as adversaries. Law's attack, his awakening, and Kid's awakening were very interesting. Kid's is very, I guess when I saw it, I was like, oh yeah, well yeah, if I had thought about that a little bit more logically, that I could have seen myself getting to the conclusion that that would be his awakening, you know, being able to magneto things and assign magnetic poles to certain objects, you know, north or south poles, and then making them attract or repulse certain things that he sets. And Law's was very interesting to me. I find his anesthesia attack very interesting. I agree with a lot of what I've seen other people say when it comes to, it seems that he coats his blade in a room, and he's able to manipulate his blade, you know, like it was some type of, you know, entity within his room. You know, it doesn't hurt when he stabs you with it, but the amount of damage that he can do with it from all of his normal attacks, like, you know, the shockwave or the counter shock, I meant, and the injection shot, you know, all of these different moves that he has, the gamma knife, like, they become more powerful in this state. And I really like that. I think that's a cool ability, and I think that there's a lot that he can do with that, and I think the way he used it on Big Mom was, like, masterful. Like, that was a really cool tag team between him and Kid, and it's still hilarious that they were still fighting about, like, you know, who's gonna get the last attack in, or, like, who's ordering who. You know, they still had enough in them to joke about that while they're fighting at Yonko. But I just really like the way that the fight played out, and I like the way that Kid and Law worked together to take her down, because they knew they had to. It wasn't at that point worried. They weren't worried about, you know, rivalry between themselves. They knew that they couldn't do it alone, so they had to work together to take this woman out. And I think Big Mom, in my opinion, is not dead. I do not believe she is dead. I know she fell through the hole center of Onigashima, and she fell down with all of the explosives that were in the base of Onigashima, but I don't believe that she's dead. I mean, like I said, this is the same woman that took an entire Bronchiosaurus to the head. Now, granted that Law probably did a lot of internal damage to her with the gamma knife, I still think that she is alive, but I do believe that she is on death's door. And one thing that I heard Joy Boy Theory say in one of his videos back when this chapter happened was that he's an advocate for something by the name of Ghost Piece, which is, he believes that there's going to be a event or a, you know, spiritual bridge that bridges with the living realm, where the spirits of the dead samurai and warriors and the spirits of the dead are going to come and visit or aid in some way the warriors who are on this battlefield right now, to kind of rival them, or not rival, but rev them up to finish and, you know, solidify their victory and reclaim Wano and open its borders. I really am a big fan of this, because I think it's a really cool idea. There's a lot of emotional impact that could have with a lot of characters, and there's a lot of resolution that can be had with certain characters for character development. I feel like Carrot meeting Pedro and, you know, maybe trying to alleviate that sense of vengeance he has in her that Wanda alluded to, you know, would be really good. I think Big Mom finally finding out the truth between what happened with her and Mother Carmel and the orphans, like, would be very impactful, especially if she's close to death. What better time to be visited by someone who's dead, you know, when you're close to it, that you loved. You know, with Odin and his son Momonosuke, and Hiyori, his daughter, and his retainers, and, you know, maybe even Ashura Doji, because I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, I do believe Ashura Doji at this point is dead, but, you know, it could be significant that he, you know, comes up and rivals them to get up and to survive and, you know, hold on to life. I can see a lot of good that could come out of that, and that's why I don't believe Big Mom is dead, partly because she's not that easy to kill to me. I do believe she's defeated, but not dead. Once Luffy was back on the roof and actually fighting Kaido again, and had been knocked down by, you know, being diverted by this CP0 entity that, or Cypropology 0 entity that decided to distract him for just a moment, just like the old witch did to, that had the clone fruit to Odin. Just long enough for Kaido to get his mighty strike in that he had already revved up and could not unwind. I think that really hurt Kaido. You know, he had this big grandeur speech about, you know, winners don't need rationalizations, and I don't really feel like he fully believes that himself. Maybe he's brought himself to believe that, especially now that we know that he came from a warmongering country, the kingdom of vodka. But I don't believe that he fully accepts that in his soul, because of the reaction he had when he found out how he had just knocked out Luffy. And in his mind, he had just beat him. Like, that was it. And it was very reminiscent of how he had beat Oden, and I think that agitated him to the point to where, you know, obviously he was enraged enough to kill that Cypher Poe agent that did not even put up a fight against him. He just kind of knew that he was dead. There was no escape. So he just kind of sat there and grabbed his hat, and I guess the other Cypher Poe Aegis guy kind of, you know, figured, you know, well, he's dead. Farewell. Because I guess in their field of work, that's kind of what it has to be when you're sent on a mission like that, to do something so suicidal. But I really like, you know, the big part that happens after this when Luffy goes Gear 5th, because I have so many amazing, like, praises to say about Gear 5th. I think it is one of the coolest reveals that I have ever witnessed, like, in a long time in One Piece. Like, I've witnessed many things in One Piece, but this one was just like, wow, like, no way, like, this is amazing. I really thought that, you know, when he first was revealed, you know, everybody thought that he had gold hair. You know, they assumed, you know, Sun God Nika, he's related to the sun is orangey red, or, you know, fiery. He uses Firehawk. You know, I could see kind of where the mentality was, to where his hair and his aura around him would be, you know, the steam around him would be, you know, orange or fiery, or just be made of fire completely, you know, because it's kind of in the name. But I was really, really excited to see that his hair was all white and his clothes turned all white, because it makes me think that Oda has been hinting at, like, this in a very subtle way through the Sulongs, because the Sulongs are all, you know, when they look at the moon, they become pure white coated beasts. You know, they become this new form, and they're reborn through the full moon into these majestic, pure white, you know, mythical looking creatures. And Luffy having that Sulong looking, you know, form, I just thought was really cool. It was almost like, hey, it's been kind of hinted at the whole time, but now, you know, this is what it was all leading up to. And I love the fact that his fruit was, like, hidden to be a zone type, because, you know, me personally, I had never even thought before this chapter, never even crossed my mind, just to go to show just how imaginative Oda can be, that a zone type fruit could be modeled after a mythical human. I just assumed from what we had seen that all zone type fruits had to be based on some type of beast, whether it be a mythical beast or an actual beast, or, lo and behold, a gifter beast. You know, I just never thought that it could take the form of a mythical human. But it makes so much sense now that I, like, think about it. Like, you know, humans, in a way, when they're depicted in mythos, you know, when you have mythical types of human-like creatures, it's just as, you know, majestic as, you know, any other beast, in a way, or mythical beast. So seeing that his fruit was actually a zone type was just really, really cool to me. I really found that very interesting, and I really like the fact that the Gurusei were given a chance to really expound upon how important this fruit actually was. The fact that this fruit had been hidden from the annals of history for, you know, 800 years, you know, many, many years, and they've been trying to capture this fruit themselves for as long as they can remember, but they can't. It's like they said, like, the fruit itself is eluding them, so that it cannot be captured by them to be used for whatever, you know, act that they plan on doing with it. But the fact that they said that the fruit had the ability to grant the user, you know, a rubber-like properties to their body, which we've seen plenty of that from Luffy. It also completely explains now how he was able to do anything dealing with gear, well, not gear, but the Red Hawk attack. Like, we thought maybe that was Ace's spirit working through Luffy in some way, but really, he just had a sun god fruit the whole time. It was already innate in him. And then he does the red rock attack, and he's like able to like imbue his armament hockey with fire. Like, how is he able to do this? Like, how is he able to, you know, naturally do this? Well, come to find out, he's a mythical sun god. And I just think that's so cool that, you know, that reveal was hidden in that way. You know, it's been there and hinted at all the time, but the odds of you really figuring out that that's what it was like, I know for me it was like next to none, because I would have never figured that. But I love the reveal, and I love the fact that the Gurusei said that he has the ability to essentially make his imagination his power. So whatever he can imagine kind of becomes his power, which is really cool, because up until this point, if you know anything about Luffy, that's how he operates. He made his fruit unique through his imagination. All these different forms he comes up with, you know, Gear Force Bounce Man, or Gear Force Snake Man, or Gear Force Tank Man. All these attacks he comes up with, when originally his fruit was seen as pretty, you know, dull and useless by, you know, Ace and Sabo when they were like seeing what he could do with it. It also makes me question, if Shanks was the one that had this fruit, it makes me wonder where Shanks found it and how he got his hands on it. I'm really curious to find that out from Shanks, because I'm sure it wasn't his intention to give it to Luffy, obviously. But the fact that he had it, I wonder, was he maybe planning on eating it himself, or maybe planning on doing something with it that was, you know, more profound than we may have imagined. Like, Shanks is a very mysterious character, but he always seems to make very bold moves. So I wonder where he got it and what he was planning on doing with it. That makes me question that now. But then we get to the actual fight, and Luffy's doing all of these, you know, crazy things, like running on the air, like turning the ground, you know, obviously being able to manipulate the environment around him with his fruit, turning the ground rubbery, bouncing Kaido's, you know, Boral Blast back at him, or Boral Breath back at him, you know, bouncing on the ground, chilling. I love his demeanor in the form. It's very befitting of Luffy's character. I think that one of the things that really was very enjoyable about watching the whole thing when it first happened was just how carefree he was. Like, he's just bouncing around, doesn't have a care in the world. He's fighting a Yonko, but he still has, you know, this desire to beat him, but he's doing it almost in like a very Luffy way. Like, it's almost like he hasn't changed at all. He's just gotten more of himself. You know, I find it very interesting that his heart, though, seems to be moving to a rhythm. And that rhythm, I can't say at this point whether it's some other entity from, you know, the devil fruit, you know, the gum fruit, that is reviving him or keeping him alive. Because one semblance of this that made me think about it was when Luffy kind of ran out of steam at a moment when he was fighting Kaido, and his face started to droop, and he kind of, you know, came out of his Ultra Instinct form, and he's kind of drooping, and he tells Kaido, like, you know, I'm about to croak, but, you know, I can't stop now. Like, I still have a purpose to fulfill, and I can't lose now because I have people I'm fighting for, and, you know, I can't afford to lose. And then he calls out the names of these people like Tama and, you know, Kinemon and Pedro, you know, and that ignites his heart again to that beat, that rhythmic beat, to set him back into that form. And I really felt like that was really powerful. Like, this form almost seems like he's able to go into it, maybe partly definitely from being in a near-death state, but also from his strong love for the people he cares about. It's like their hearts are beating with him. Their hearts are giving life to him. You know, the people he fights for are becoming his strength. They're becoming his life, his heartbeat. And I really like the idea of that. I think that's a really cool, you know, ideology. I do believe that this, like most of his gear forms, is probably going to put a really big strain on him. So much so that it might actually kill him, you know, like from just being in the form for too long. And the fight was not very one-sided as we thought it was going to be. When Luffy went Gear 5th, he was still kind of getting bodied by Kaido, you know. Kaido still had armament haki. He's like, you know, having a cool devil fruit is cool and all, but, you know, you still need haki, because that's how you really change the world. All of the strongest people in the world didn't have devil fruits. They had haki, just really, really strong haki, and that's what made them, you know, these inconquerable beings. I imagine Rocks was probably one of those type of beings. You know, I don't know yet. We don't know yet, but, you know, we'll see. He may have been like a Shanks type of guy, or, you know, a Garp type of guy. He just had really strong haki and solidified his position as a, you know, pirate through that, including Roger. But I really liked his ability to be able to turn other people and, you know, rubbery. Like when he punched through Kaido's face and it like stretched his face back. Or, you know, when he was able to like grab Kaido and turn his body rubbery, or go inside of his mouth when he got eaten by Kaido and turn his body rubbery. I feel like that's very interesting as a power, and I feel like him turning into a giant was also very interesting, because he didn't have to apparently, you know, blow air into his bones like Gear 3rd to pull that off, because I mean, he was in the cloud, so I guess he could have done it, but, you know, for him to get that big, like, that was crazy, like, the amount of air that would take, because we see how long it usually takes him to blow up his bones, and that takes a while, but he was able to blow himself up to, like, the size of Kaido, and did jump rope with the man, like, disrespecting him, like, mad disrespect. But it was just really funny to see, like, him with this new form just being goofy, and all of his attacks are goofy, his mannerisms are goofy, he's laughing, he can't stop laughing. I love that he can't stop laughing. And he's just this really carefree being, but he's like super agile and just full of innovative fighting techniques, and so free-flowing with his fighting. Even Kaido complimented him on that. He's like I can't read this guy's movement. He's fighting like something I've never seen before. It's actually kind of exciting, you know? In the midst of them fighting, you know, Kanjuro's Spirit of Hatred, which has been ordered by Orochi to overtake Wano and burn up everybody, has been burning the entire place. And who comes to the rescue? Raizo of the Mist. And I know for some people, when I was reading around this time, when I was watching the reviews from Joy Boy Theories, that they were kind of surprised by, you know, this being a Raizo moment and, you know, not a Denjiro moment, because, you know, Denjiro was supposed to be this guy that was supposed to have this really grandeur, you know, role to play in this war, and I will have more to say on him in a little bit. But I think that Raizo was kind of the perfect pick to be able to do this, because his name is literally Raizo of the Mist. You know, if you watch Naruto at all, ninjas hidden in the mist are like the water-based ninjas, like, so, like, of course he'd be able to do it. And it was kind of already hinted that he could store elements. I mean, it was literally shown that he could store elements in his scroll, because he stored Kaido's Boral Blast in his scroll, which is fire, and then, you know, released it back out to him. So the fact that him and Jinbei got together and came up with that plan based on Raizo's direction, I feel like was really cool. And it was a really cool use of Zoe being able to enact some free will to be able to help out, you know, the battle situation as best she could. Because, you know, Jinbei, always being cool as he is, he did the ocean current shoulder throw and perfectly threw the, you know, water spout that Zoe was able to generate out of Raizo's scroll to save everyone from burning alive. And I feel like that was really crucial, because had they not done that, there's probably a lot of soldiers that would have just accepted death, like Grandpa Hyo was trying to convince them, you know, wasn't so bad. And he was right, you know. At least, you know, our families and our wives and children and our countrymen are going to be able to survive. What's a few, you know, burnt samurai, you know, when our daimyo, or not our daimyo, our shogun, what should have been our shogun, Odin, boiled to death for all of us. Like, we did what we could do. If this is the way we have to go, we've made a change. That's all that matters. I really admired that Bushido type of mentality, you know, like dying with reason, not for a meaningless reason, you know. You fulfilled something, and if you have to die after you fulfilled that, then at least you were able to accomplish what you set out to do. One thing I will say in regards to this in particular, with Kanjuro's spirit of hatred, you know, going around burning everything, is when it finally met up with Orochi and, you know, touched him. Maybe we could say, you know, that was intentional of Kanjuro's spirit. I don't know how much of Kanjuro was in that spirit, but from what I understood, it was like a pure embodiment of just hatred and malice. You know, just burning hatred and malice. But I really like how the fire was used, especially in conjunction with how Kaido's fire that he covered his body in was used, because Orochi's fire was created, you could argue, by himself. Kanjuro was enlisted by Orochi to be his puppet, to enact his vengeance. He was an actor, so whatever emotions, you know, he was supposed to act out, that's what he did. That's what he, you know, that was his role until his mission was complete. I feel like Orochi really imbued in him, you know, a piece, if not a large part, of his own hatred in him, especially with Kanjuro being a Kodazumi. You know, maybe they just had innate hatred for them, but I find it very poetic, life lesson wise. Like, he was burned by his own hatred. Like, that's what killed him. His own fiery wrath and hatred that he was so filled with from what had happened to his people. He was, you know, destroyed by it. It's the very thing that was his undoing. And, you know, I've hated Orochi since the moment they showed him. I couldn't think of a more fitting way for him to, you know, be destroyed by his own fires. Kaido used his fire in a way to where it coated his whole body, but Kaido's wrath and hatred is different from Orochi's. I dare say it's brighter, which is probably why it was depicted as being way hotter. Probably not just because he's a dragon, but because of the fact that his hatred stems from something more malicious, or more, I'd say, maybe not malicious, but more, what's the word I'm looking for here? Maybe more, a bit developed than Orochi's. Like, he has good reason to have such intense hatred because of what he went through as a child. Like, being a warmonger child, being sold off by the world government, you know, or by his people from the Kingdom of Vodka to be a world government dog. And we know from his first introduction, when he crashed out of the Sky Island that, you know, Yorogi was preying on, when he tried to kill himself, that he's suicidal. He constantly drinks because he's constantly in a state of depression about being alive. He can't accept the fact of being alive in a world that he lives in, but he can't do anything to take himself out. So in my opinion, he was so desperate to do it that he was going to incite a giant war to try to bring all of the strongest people together in one place, in hopes that that'd probably be enough to kill him. Now, we've gotten more complexity from Kaido as a warrior and a, you know, a brawler or a battler, from what we've seen in his backstory and just how he is in Wano, but he doesn't have a lot of emotion in him because of what he grew up around. He's kind of like Big Mom. Well, maybe in a way like a contradiction to Big Mom, because Big Mom grew up in a loving environment through her eyes. You know, she didn't know Mother Carmel was also trying to sell her off to the world government, but she also lived in a way where Mother Carmel raised them in a way where they were completely unaware of most of the dangers and malice that was in the world. Like, they were loved, they were treated the same. Kaido, I don't feel like, had that. He lived in a warmongering society of, you know, army, soldier, war, battlefields, death. He probably, like, witnessed it a million times. which is probably why he was so hardened at 10 and even more hardened at 15. And he didn't like the idea of being sold off to the world government because in his eyes, like, we're stronger than them. We can overtake them. But he was probably too young to understand how big the world government was and just how dangerous it was to wage a war against them. I really feel like Kaido is a very complex villain, and I'd love to get to know more about him. I don't think we have enough on him yet to really justify why completely he is the way he is. One of the things that still confuses me is why he's so suicidal. Like, that part to me still has not been fully explained. I'd like to know more about, you know, what he really planned on doing when he incited that great war. Was it just to destroy the world, just to watch it burn? Or was it to really try to find, you know, a reasonable way to get himself killed? The best odds he had to get himself killed. I'm not sure, but I really like the way that Kaido's fire was not burning him, because, you know, it could be argued that his spirit is just so callous and filled with hatred that even the fires of his own hatred aren't enough to incinerate his body like Orochi's body was being incinerated. I feel like Kaido is really one of those characters where when we get to know a little bit more about him, I think that we're going to have kind of a Doflamingo kind of realization about him that, hey, maybe, you know, this guy's still, you know, bad at the end of the day. He's still not a good person. What he's done is very heinous, but I could see how he was molded into this. I could see how this turned him into this monster, you know, the king of the beasts, you know, this thing, as Big Mom calls him, this monster, because he really stands up to that name, especially with what he did with setting his body ablaze and, you know, singeing the horn off of Onigashima, and was fully confident in challenging Luffy. I think Joy Boy Theory said it in a very poetic way that I liked. He said, there are moments when Oda makes you respect Luffy's adversaries as adversaries. And I think that was a very good way of depicting, a very good description of how I felt when Kaido set his body ablaze. Luffy let go of him, and he said, oh, you don't have to worry about me running. I'm not going anywhere. I don't plan on actually, you know, taking your punch head on, because I am going to incinerate your hand before you have a chance to actually hit me. So it was a really cool moment that was like, wow, like, this guy is a really cool adversary. Like, he's still heinous. It doesn't make me want to root for him, as Joy Boy Theory says, but it definitely makes me respect him as an adversary. Another thing that I thought was really interesting and beautiful was one of the panels that I'll show here, where Oda drew Onigashima looming closer to the fire festival in Wano Kuni and in Kuri, I believe. But I felt like it was so beautiful to see all of these people that had been tormented for the last 20 years holding on to a thread of a prayer, and they're sending their prayers up to the heavens, where they're hoping it's going to reach their loved ones and, you know, anybody that's listening. You're seeing these types, you're seeing the prayers that they're putting on to these lanterns, like, please get rid of Orochi. And then you see Denjiro rush in and cut off Orochi's head, his last head, holding, you know, Hiyori, preserving the Kozuki clan and getting rid of the evil shogun that had taken the Kozuki's name from its rightful place. And then you see things like, please destroy Kaido, or take out the scary dragon, or I just want to eat good food or drink clean water. And then you see in the distance, you know, all these lights that are illuminating Wano Kuni, illuminating Kuri. And it's a huge contrast to the looming darkness that's just a few hundred miles away from them. I thought that was a really beautifully drawn scene, because it really showed the collide between the two fates that Wano could fall in, depending on the outcome of this war. Like, it's either going to be that these people's, you know, suffering is ended, and that their prayers are going to shine and bring about the new dawn, or this looming cloud is going to consume them all, and they're just going to be grind it to dust what remains of him. And I just really like the way he drew it, because just from seeing the panel, it conveyed that to me when I first saw it. It just spoke that out to me. And seeing how bright the fire festival was lighting up the sky in Wano Kuni in Kuri district, it was just like everybody's prayers, their spirits were collectively shining against the looming darkness that was coming their way. In their own way, they were fighting against the corruption and the idea of the continued, suffering of their people. And those prayers were strong enough to bring about a miracle. And I just felt like that was very poetic, and one of those times where Oda masterfully draws a scene and conveys a whole message just through the scenery. I think that, one quick note, I think that a lot of the reason why Queen was not in many of Kaido's flashbacks, but they showed a lot of King, was that King and Kaido are very similar to me. They both were from rare races. They both were, experimented on by the world government, used by the world government, whatever heinous things they were doing to them, and they were both freed from the world government, under Kaido's, power that he freed King. But I feel like they share a lot in common, but I don't feel like there's a lot that Kaido and Queen really share in common from what I've seen of Queen, which is probably why he was in none of the flashbacks. It was mostly just, Arbor or King. And it could be argued that, King was his first mate, so, of course he'd be in his, in his early flashbacks, but, he's the only one that he was talking to even after he had established the Beast Pirates, which I'm sure at that point Queen was a part of it. But I just find it really interesting that Queen was not really a part of his memories or his flashbacks that were shown. It was mostly King, and I guess that was, to me, to show how similar they were in ideology. And to think that Kaido, knew that Joy Boy was going to be the entity that destroyed him, whoever it was. In the words of Joy Boy Theories, I'm actually very curious to find out what led him to that mental conclusion that, he's not Joy Boy, but whoever can beat him is. I'd like to really know how he got to that mindset. Momonosuke, in his little moment of heroism, when he needed to, move on Onigashima so that Luffy had a clear shot to not, destroy the entire island with this giant island-sized fist, I really felt like it was, in the words of Joy Boy, very fitting for the situation, just good enough for that situation. Like, I was expecting something a little bit more heroic, maybe Momonosuke, really coming to terms with, I have to take up the role of Shogun, and he kind of did that. He kind of did. But in that final moment of him needing to, it's now or never, when, Kaido's flame clouds went out and the island was in the process of falling, it was kind of more out of a thing of desperation. And I think that was the joke there with, Momonosuke and Yamato looking so surprised when he actually did it. Oh, wow, he did it. Cool. Finally. But I do believe that more of Momonosuke is going to be done to really instill his heroism and the fact that he's the new shogun of Wano. And I love the fact that of all things that Oda chose to make him, he made him a dragon. Because just as there was a dragon of brutality that reigned over the people, he could be the dragon of hope, the dragon of strength that protects Wano. He could be the complete converse of Kaido and, still be able to, get rid of this scarred image of the dragon on these people's hearts that Kaido has kind of imbued in these people from his brutality amongst them. But I can't wait to see how he looks now that he's matured. But you also have to remember that he still has a kid's mind. He's aged literally in physical sense, and it's kind of one of those things, you can grow old or you can grow older, whether in mind or in body. Some people don't age, mentally, as they grow older. They don't process what it takes to, you know, become an adult or to take on new responsibilities, to instill a role of maturity that comes with growing physically. And I feel like Momonosuke is a good embodiment of that statement, because, you know, he needs to be the Shogun of Wano. You know, timeline wise, he should be the age that he actually is now, because I imagine that's what they did. They just made him the age that he really should be at this point in time. If he hadn't been sent back to the future 20 years ago, he really isn't any different, literally, than what he was. He's just a bigger body with a dragon body. He can do more with his body, but he's still Momonosuke. He still has this kid's mindset. He still has those fears that made him, you know, not want to challenge Kaido or fight him. That Luffy had to persuade him to, you know, hey, like, you're a giant dragon now. Like, you have to be brave. You're the Shogun of Wano. You have to protect your people and your country. You can't be little Momonosuke anymore. Like, you have to grow now. I think that it's given with a little bit of leniency that Momonosuke is going to need some time to really fill that role of becoming the Shogun of Wano that they need, you know, like Oden was destined to be. But I did like the way that they depicted his heroism in this moment. I found it really funny that he had just enough flame cloud left in him, or just enough flame cloud to be able to, like, bring it down gently to the ground. He didn't, like, actually pull it away or hold it up or anything. He just kind of held it long enough to where it could drift down and touch the ground, and then that took everything out of him. And I found that really funny. Another thing that I found really interesting was Kaido's question to Luffy. He looked him, you know, pretty grimacely in the face and said, you know, you can't change the world. And coming from Kaido, I could see how he could say that so, you know, confidently to Luffy, because he's seen the world. He's lived in it. He's lived in the cruel side of the world, and so has Luffy. But I feel like Kaido probably had it a lot worse, for sure. Like, almost objectively had it worse. He sees that, you know, the world apparently in whatever state it is that he knows it to be in, and the celestial dragons, that it's not going to be plausible to change the world in his mind. Like, you can't change it with, you know, love and stuff to Kaido. Like, you have to use brutality and warmongering, because that's the only thing that reigns supreme and makes anything happen is strength. Like, Doflamingo said it beautifully in his speech, where he said, you know, whoever writes history is the winner of the war. You know, that's who writes history. And the losers don't get a say in it, because they lost. So I kind of feel like Kaido's mentality really goes hand in hand with that, which is probably why he likes Doflamingo, because in some ways they share similar ideology. And on top of that, you know, the whole thing with that face-changing witch woman that had the clone fruit that told him, you know, men are beasts. Humankind is a brutal race, and they solve things through brutality, and brutality really is the only way to make any type of real change in the world, because that's the only thing people respond to. That's the only thing mankind responds to. Now, I don't fully agree with that, because with the witch, because I think Luffy is a standing embodiment that, you know, you don't need that to change the world, and I believe by the end of the anime he will prove that. But I do love Luffy's response to Kaido's question about what it really means, what he wants in his ideal world. Like, what would you change about this world? And he simply told him, I just want a world where all of my friends can eat as much as they want, can have their fill. It goes back to Luffy's, like, childlike humbleness. Like, he is unique in that sense, because he has a very, you know, childish outlook sometimes, and he has very childish responses. It even took Kaido off guard. He's like, what? Excuse me? But the thing is that his ideologies are pure. They're like an unharmed, or an tamed child in a way. Or not untamed, but untainted child. Like, he has pure mentalities in him that are just very simplistic things that are just kind, that we all innately have in us, I believe, when we're born. And he just holds those ideals very strong, in his heart. And that's all he has to fight for. Just for his friends to be able to live in peace and eat their fill. That's all he wants. And he can't do that. And he know that can't be the reality if Kaido is the ruler of that country. If Big Mom is the ruler of her country, you know, or ruling over Fishman Island. It was really just powerful to me, because it really brought me back to those old Luffy, you know, fights where he used to fight people like Crocodile, or fight people like Black Cat, the out of the bag guy that was in Syrup Village that Usopp and them helped him fight, or people like Don Krieg. Like, he had very simplistic things that meant the world to him, and to him it's more about the adventure and having the freedom to travel and meet people and be happy and share this journey with his friends than about conquering and taking over lands and imposing his, you know, power over other people and amassing all these, you know, fleets under him like Kaido and the Beast Pirates. That doesn't mean anything to Luffy. He just wants the world to be at peace and for everybody to live happily and be able to do what they desire and eat their fill and just live happy, normal lives and be free. He just wants to be free. He wants everybody to have the ability to be free. And I think that's one of the most beautiful things about his character. So obviously, Kaido got knocked down from Onigashima, straight down to where Big Mom is, I assume, or near her. And the chapter ends. Like, we don't know if this is the end or not, but I can almost assure you it's not. I don't believe it is, because they're Yonko. They don't go down that easily. If Katakuri was able to get up after everything that Luffy had put him through, just to fall back down, but just long enough to, you know, tell him like, hey, are you gonna actually defeat Big Mom? He's like, yeah, of course I will. He's like, well, I guess you can see into the future. Like, Katakuri was a underling of Big Mom. If he's able to do it, I assure you that Kaido and Big Mom are not done here. There's more to this, and I don't believe they're defeated. I do believe they are at their limit, though. They are like one tap away, one good hit away from being knocked out and finally defeated. But it could also be said about Luffy. He's expended a lot of energy in this fight, especially in withstanding the heat wave that Kaido was generating from that Blazing Dragon Bagua that he did, or Rising Dragon Blazing Bagua. He has withstood a lot of damage from Kaido, so much so that at the end of the chapter he's falling out of the sky and he looks like he just doesn't have anything left in him at all. We already know that he's pushing himself, because when he came out of the Gear 5th form for a little bit, he could already feel that he was near death's door. It's already been hinted at that, you know, some of the Straw Hats are near death's door, specifically talking about Zoro, with the Grim Reaper standing over him, that may or may not be Brook, but hopefully, you know, it's not. It's just something that I believe that is going to be definitely the next occurrence in the next chapter after a week from now, that he's not done. Kaido, Big Mom, or Luffy. Like, they can't be done yet, because this is a fight between emperors. If we have people like Akainu and Aokiji fighting on Punk Hazard for 10 days, you know, or you got people like Roger and Whitebeard that were fighting for, you know, what, 3 days, you know, straight. Like, we're talking about Yonko here. Like, they don't just go down that easily. These are emperors of the sea. I believe they're going to stand back up, and they're going to try to push their last push to try to take these guys down, and we'll see who wins. But, you know, at this point, everybody's at their limit, so it's very ambiguous as to what's going to happen. Now, I'd like to end this by, I know this has been pretty long, but I'd like to end this by saying that there is a panel that Oda was in for Jump Fiesta 2021, where he was writing some, you know, things about One Piece, and, you know, some of the upcoming things at that time that were coming up, like the film Red movie and the live action One Piece film that's coming out, and the current state of the Wano arc. And he said something that I'd like to show here. He said specifically that, put it in a summary terms, there are certain panels that Oda has really enjoyed drawing or finds very fond to look back on in One Piece. A couple of them that I know, one of them is the I believe the bonfire ceremony that they had at the end of the Skypiea arc, and I can show the picture here, and also the introduction to Wano Kuni, like the way Wano Kuni was drawn. And I want to say another one that he really liked drawing and finds fond was the depiction of Fishman Island in the Ryugyuru, I can't say it too well, kingdom when it was first revealed. So he said here in this Jump Fiesta panel that he cannot wait to draw the last panel, the conclusion to the Wano Kuni arc. He cannot wait to draw it, and he is excited to draw it. And I find this very interesting because it's basically a surefire hint or confirmation that this isn't over, because I don't feel like we've reached a point, I don't feel like we've hit that panel yet. I haven't seen a panel yet, in my opinion, that solicits like the end of Wano, the end of this arc. I've had ideas about what it could be, just ideas that I, romanticize would be cool. One of them that I thought about was the fact that, if Kaido and Big Mom get up, again, which I believe they will, for sure, and they have one final, blow, that they need to deal to each other to see who's going to be on top, who's going to take over who's going to be pushed ahead into, being closer to getting the One Piece and becoming the Pirate King. It would be really cool if the attack that, was dealt was so powerful, maybe by Luffy alone, or maybe Luffy collectively with, the other Ninja Mink Pirate Alliance people or Kid and Law working together to deliver a final blow against them all that was aided by the spirits. This goes back to the Ghost Piece theory. Joy Boy Theories has really advocated for, which I'm a big fan of. It would be really cool if the ghosts of the dead, like Odin, like Toki, like people like Shiradoji, Pedro, all these people who have fallen in battle, all these fallen samurai, even the previous samurai that were shown finally in the last chapter that were going to be Odin's retainers, or not retainers, but like the samurai of Wano that were notorious, which one of them looked very, very much like Zoro, in my opinion. It'd be cool if they came down and their spirits riled up Luffy and the rest of whoever might, deal the final blow with him, aided them in delivering that final blow. Kind of like that situation if you've ever watched Naruto. And if you never watched Naruto, I'm about to spoil something, so, if you don't want to hear it, skip past to this timestamp. If not, then, here I go. So, there was a scene in Naruto I remember where Naruto put out his hand to make a Rasengan, and the Rasengan was made not just by his hand, but by the hand of Minato and his mother, and Iruka Sensei, and all these other people who had helped and cultivated Naruto into what he was, and he used that as his power. It was like the spirits of those people were giving him power. And I really like the idea of that being like how Wano will end. Like the spirits of these people who have been wronged and who have suffered and who have died to the hands of Kaido and Orochi's brutality and the Beast Pirates' brutality come together to help and aid Luffy to deal a final blow. And this final blow will be so powerful that it will destroy the rocks around Wano, or whatever's closing Wano, which I imagine are those giant rocks around the island, and open Wano's borders to the rest of the world. And as this is happening, as Kaido and Big Mom are flying and smashing into this rock, or into the island of Wano from the blow, and it like breaks the rock around, you know, the entire island, the dawn comes, the sun arises. You know, everybody's exhausted from that last final push that they just made, but they see the spirits of all of the warriors like Odin and Toki and the samurai that died fighting against Kaido's brutality. Echiro Oda going back, you know, smiling while the dawn is coming. Pedro, like, to me that would be like, wow, like that was, now that to me would be like the type of final panel that I'm thinking about, that would be that impactful to end an arc as monumental as this one. So I know this has been a while, and I thank you for bearing with me if you made it this far, but this was really just my way of just summarizing some of the most profound like parts of Wano to me at this point. There's more profound parts than that. I feel like at this point in Wano we're at the end. We're very close to it. So might as well give it all the praise we can give it, you know, while we're in the moment. Because, you know, it's not going to be another moment. There's not going to be another Wano moment. You know, Wano arc is ending. So I want to get my praise in there for this arc and everything that it's done, because it's amazing. And I feel like it's very praiseworthy, and it's some of the best story writing I've seen in my life. And I'm in love with the story, the characters, the arc. It is one of the strongest arcs to me in One Piece. It's beautiful. And concerning Denjiro, a lot of people seem to think that, you know, he didn't really have his moment. Like, you know, he was kind of slept on in a way. But I would argue that he probably had one of the most profound moments. You have to remember, this guy endured 20 years of playing his enemies, his most hated enemies, puppet, for the sake of protecting Odin's, you know, daughter. The rest of the samurai, just holding on to hope, losing his mind. You know, one day, that day will come that Toki prophesized, and that they would be free and be able to take back Wano from these people. He endured that for 20 years. And you could argue, like, yeah, the rest of the people of Wano did too. I mean, yeah, they did. Echiro Oda did too, but you see how bitter and how much he had lost hope in their return. I feel like Denjiro was quite the opposite. He never lost hope. So the fact that he was able to endure that for all that time, all that suffering, including being in the witching hour, boy, and trying to help the people of, you know, Leftover Town, or Ubisu Town, to me, he had already won his moment. Just him doing that alone, to me, I can only imagine how much willpower that took him to push himself through that. So in my eyes, Denjiro had already won his moment. Him coming to rescue Hiyori and finishing off Orochi was just the icing on the cake to me. He was there, enduring Wano in the miserable state it was in for all those years. You know, Kinemon wasn't there. Raizo wasn't there. They were out looking to do other things. They weren't there in Wano with him, enduring that for all those years. I do thank you all for watching this video, and if you found this conversation thought-provoking in any way, I very much invite you to share your thoughts in the comments, because I'm very open to discussing this with everybody who's interested in One Piece, because that's half of the reason I make these types of videos that I want to, is because I want to share my passion for the series with people that also like it. In my immediate environment, there's really no one that even knows the anime exists, so this is kind of my only way of showing or being able to interact with people who like it. So, you know, put your thoughts, whatever they might be. I'm open to any thoughts, you know, as long as they're kind and constructive on the, you know, story and to other people. But put any thoughts, you know, that you want. You know, as Joy Boy says, you know, like the video if you like it, dislike it if you dislike it. you know, but I do enjoy that, talking about this, and I hope that you all enjoyed it, and I hope to continue sharing the joy of One Piece with you all, and can't wait to see the next chapter and revel in its glory as we come to the end of the Wano arc. You guys have a really good day, and I have my prayers with all of you, and I hope that you all prosper and stay well.